The carriage lurched to a halt, and Sibylla Thorne's heart lurched with it. Dunmore Hall rose from the moor like a bruise against the winter sky. Gray stone, narrow windows, towers that looked designed for keeping people in rather than keeping them out. The wind howled across the empty landscape, carrying sleet that stung her cheeks the moment the footman wrenched open the door. "Miss Thorne." The voice came from the top of the entrance stairs. Deep. Cold. Not a question. She looked up, squinting through the weather, and froze. The man descending toward her wasn't a servant. He moved with the particular authority of someone who had never been told no in his life. Tall, dark-haired, dressed entirely in black as if in mourning or perhaps warning. His face was all sharp angles and shadows, and his eyes were fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "I was expecting Lady Dunmore," Sibylla said, finding her voice. "I was told I would be companion to the Dowager Duchess." "The Dowager Duchess died 8 months ago." The words hit like a slap. "Died? Then why am I here?" "Welcome to Dunmore Hall, Miss Thorne." He stopped before her, too close, his gaze traveling over her face with unsettling deliberation. "I am Caelan Vane, the Duke of Dunmore." The Duke. She was standing in a frozen courtyard with an unmarried duke, sent by her family to an estate where her supposed employer no longer existed. The scandal of it would destroy what little remained of her already tattered reputation. "There has been a mistake," she said carefully. "My brother arranged for me to serve as companion to your mother. If she has passed, I should return to London immediately. In this weather?" He glanced at the sky, which had darkened to the color of iron. "The roads will be impassable within the hour. You would not make it to the village, let alone London. Then I will stay at an inn until the weather clears. The nearest inn is 12 miles south. You passed it this morning." His tone was flat, almost bored. "You are welcome to try, of course. I will instruct the coachman to prepare for a frozen death." Sibylla's spine stiffened. "You are remarkably cavalier about stranding an unmarried woman at your estate." "I am remarkably practical about not letting an unmarried woman freeze to death on my moor." He turned toward the entrance. "Come inside. Miss Thorne, we can discuss your objections where it is warm." She did not move. "My brother will hear of this." "Your brother knows exactly where you are." Something in his voice made her stomach drop. He said it with certainty, with knowing, as if Phineas had not merely arranged her employment, but had conspired in something darker. "What does that mean?" she demanded. But the Duke was already climbing the stairs, his black coat snapping in the wind. "Come inside," he repeated without turning. "Before you lose feeling in your extremities. I would hate for our first proper conversation to involve amputations." Sibylla stood in the courtyard, sleet soaking through her cloak, and felt the last fragile threads of her control begin to fray. She had no money of her own, no friends who would take her in after the scandal, no family who wanted her anywhere near London society. Phineas had made that perfectly clear when he had put her in the carriage 4 days ago with a tight smile and tighter instructions. "Stay north until I send for you. Do not write, do not make yourself known. Simply disappear until this unfortunate business is forgotten." Unfortunate business, as if having her reputation shredded by a man she had trusted was merely an inconvenience, as if the whispers and the cut directs and the invitations that stopped arriving were simply bad luck rather than systematic destruction. She had been erased from London society, and now she was standing at the edge of the world, with nowhere else to go. The Duke had disappeared inside. Light glowed from the windows, warm and taunting. Sibylla climbed the stairs. The entrance hall was vast and cold, despite the fire roaring in the massive hearth. Stone floors, dark wood paneling, portraits of ancestors, who all seemed to share the Duke's unsettling intensity. A housekeeper appeared from nowhere, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, taking Sibylla's sodden cloak with an efficiency that suggested she had been expecting this arrival. "Mrs. Brennick will show you to your rooms," the Duke said from across the hall. He had not removed his coat, had not moved toward the fire. He simply stood watching her with those unreadable eyes. "Supper is at 7. I expect you will want to rest before then." "I want to understand what is happening," Sibylla said. "Why am I here if your mother is dead? Why did my brother send me to an estate with no position waiting? Why do you speak as though you expected me? Those are excellent questions. Then answer them." His mouth curved, not quite a smile. "At supper, Miss Thorne. I find interrogations go better on a full stomach. I find evasions insulting regardless of the hour." Something flickered in his expression. Interest, perhaps, or amusement. "You have a sharp tongue. I have been told it is one of my many flaws." "By whom?" "By everyone who found it inconvenient." He studied her for a long moment. The fire crackled. The wind moaned against the windows. Mrs. Brennick stood silently, waiting. "I remember you," the Duke said, his voice dropping lower. Sibylla blinked. "I beg your pardon?" "From London, 4 years ago. The Whitfield ball." His eyes held hers. "You wore a blue dress. You laughed at something your friend said, and the entire room turned to look at you. I asked your brother for an introduction, but you had already left." She searched her memory. The Whitfield ball 4 years ago. She had been 20 then, newly out in society, giddy with the possibilities of her first season. She remembered the blue dress. She remembered laughing with Helena Marchmain near the refreshment table. She did not remember a dark-haired stranger asking for an introduction. "I do not recall meeting you," she said slowly. "We did not meet. Your brother said you were indisposed. He was lying, of course. I saw you leave through the garden doors with that Ashworth boy." His voice was carefully neutral. "I assumed you had better prospects than a northern duke with a reputation for being difficult." Sibylla felt heat climb her cheeks. Marcus Ashworth. She had been infatuated with him that season, had snuck away with him for a stolen moment in the garden. It had been innocent, foolish, the kind of mistake young women made when they believed themselves in love. It had also been the first crack in her armor, the first whisper that would grow into a roar. "That was a long time ago," she said stiffly. 4 years is not so long." He moved toward the stairs, finally breaking that unsettling eye contact. "Mrs. Brennick will see to your comfort. I will see you at supper, Miss Thorne." He climbed the stairs without looking back. She watched him go, her mind racing. He remembered her. He had asked for an introduction 4 years ago, and her brother had refused him. And now, somehow, she was standing in his entrance hall, stranded by weather and circumstance, in the home of a man who had been watching her from across a ballroom when she was too young and too stupid to notice. "Miss," Mrs. Brennick touched her elbow, "your rooms are ready." Sibylla followed the housekeeper up a different staircase, through corridors that seemed designed to confuse, past doors that stayed firmly closed. The room she was given was surprisingly warm, a fire already burning, fresh linens on the bed, a tray of tea and biscuits on the side table. "His Grace instructed us to prepare for your arrival 3 weeks ago," Mrs. Brennick said, as if reading her thoughts. "We have been expecting you." 3 weeks. He had known she was coming 3 weeks before she arrived. "How did he know?" Sibylla asked. But Mrs. Brennick was already at the door, her expression carefully blank. "Supper is at 7, miss. I would recommend the blue dress in the wardrobe. His Grace has always favored blue." The door clicked shut. Sibylla sank onto the bed, staring at nothing. 3 weeks. A blue dress already waiting. A duke who remembered her from a single glimpse at a ball 4 years ago. She was not simply stranded here. She had been summoned. Supper was a trap dressed in candlelight. The dining room was too large for 2 people, the table too long, and the silence too heavy. Sibila sat at one end in the blue dress she had found in the wardrobe, feeling like a doll arranged for someone else's amusement. The Duke sat at the other end, watching her over the rim of his wineglass with those inscrutable gray eyes. "You are not eating," he observed. "I am not hungry." "You have not eaten since breakfast. Mrs. Brennick mentioned you refused the tea tray." "Mrs. Brennick is remarkably forthcoming with information about my habits. She is paid to be observant." He set down his glass. "Eat, Miss Thorne. I have no interest in watching you starve yourself out of spite." "It is not spite. It is suspicion." She pushed a piece of roasted pheasant across her plate. "You told me you would answer my questions at supper. We are at supper. I am waiting." "You are demanding." "I have been called worse." That almost smile again, hovering at the corner of his mouth. "I imagine you have." "Very well. Ask your questions. Why am I here?" "Because your brother needed to remove you from London society, and I offered him a solution." Her fork stilled. "You offered?" "I wrote to Phineas 3 months ago, when I first heard the rumors about you and Lord Ashworth." His voice was calm, factual. "I told him that if circumstances required your removal from town, Dunmore Hall would welcome you as a guest. He accepted my offer 4 weeks ago, when the scandal became impossible to contain." 4 weeks ago. The same week Phineas had told her she was leaving London, that he had found her a position as companion to a dowager duchess in the north. He had lied. He had known all along that she was being sent, not to serve an elderly widow, but to be kept by an unmarried duke. Why? The word came out strangled. "Why would you offer such a thing? You do not know me. You saw me once at a ball 4 years ago. Once was enough." "That is not an answer. It is the only answer I intend to give tonight." He returned to his meal, cutting his pheasant with precise, deliberate movements. "You are welcome to stay at Dunmore Hall for as long as necessary. You will have your own rooms, your own servants, complete freedom to move about the estate. I ask only that you join me for meals, and refrain from attempting to flee into snowstorms. You ask that I live here, alone, with you, an unmarried woman in the home of an unmarried man." She laughed, brittle. "My reputation is already destroyed. This will bury it entirely." "Your reputation was destroyed by a man who could not accept rejection." His eyes hardened. "I am offering you sanctuary, not scandal. They are the same thing. Not if no one knows you are here." She stared at him. "What?" "Your brother told society you have gone to the continent to recover your health. A polite euphemism for exile, but effective. No one knows your actual location. No one will come looking for you here. As far as London is concerned, you have simply vanished." Vanished. The word echoed in the vast dining room. "For how long?" she whispered. "For as long as it takes for Lord Ashworth's attention to find another target. For as long as it takes for society to forget why your name was ever spoken with such venom." He set down his knife and fork, his plate half finished. "Scandals fade, Miss Thorne. Given enough time and distance, even the most vicious rumors lose their teeth. And what do you gain from this arrangement?" "Company." He said it simply, without inflection. "Dunmore is remote. The winters are long. I have spent the last 3 years alone in this house, and I find I have grown tired of solitude. So, I am entertainment. You are a guest. I am a prisoner." His expression hardened. "The doors are not locked. The carriage is at your disposal. If you wish to leave, I will not stop you. But I would ask you to consider, very carefully, what awaits you outside these walls." She knew what awaited her. London society had made that perfectly clear in the weeks before her exile. The whispered insults, The turned backs, the invitations that stopped arriving because no hostess wanted the stain of her presence. Marcus Ashworth had seen to that, had punished her for refusing to become his mistress by destroying her standing completely. And Phineas, her own brother, had sided with propriety over family, had looked at her with disappointment rather than defense, had shipped her north like damaged goods, and washed his hands of the inconvenience. "I do not understand you," she said, her voice soft but measured. "You are offering me shelter from scandal, while simultaneously creating the conditions for a new one. If anyone discovers I am here, alone with you, I will be ruined beyond repair. Then we must ensure no one discovers it. How? By being careful?" He rose from the table, moving to the window, where frost was already forming on the glass. "By keeping to the estate, by maintaining appropriate distance during daylight hours." He glanced back at her. "I am not proposing an affair, Miss Thorne. I am proposing an arrangement, a temporary cohabitation that serves both our interests." "Your interests," she repeated. "You still have not explained what those are." "I told you. Company." "You are lying." He turned fully to face her, and something shifted in his expression. The careful blankness cracked, revealing something rawer underneath. "Perhaps I am. Perhaps my reasons are more complicated than simple loneliness. But I am not ready to share them with a woman who looks at me like I am something to be escaped. Can you blame me?" "No." He moved toward the door. "I would look at me the same way, in your position. Get some rest, Miss Thorne. The storm will last 3 days at least. That should give us plenty of time to establish the terms of our arrangement. I have not agreed to any arrangement." He paused at the threshold, his back to her. "You put on the blue dress." Then he was gone. Sibylla sat alone in the enormous dining room, surrounded by candles and shadows and the distant howl of wind. She looked down at herself, at the blue silk that fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. It probably had been. 3 weeks of preparation, a dress in her exact measurements waiting in the wardrobe, a duke who remembered her face from a single glimpse 4 years ago. She was not a guest here. She was a plan. The storm did not relent. Sibylla woke on the second morning to a world erased by white. Snow had buried the courtyard, drifted against the windows, and transformed the moor into a featureless wasteland. Even the road had vanished, swallowed by winter, as if it had never existed. She was trapped. The Duke appeared at breakfast, impeccably dressed, irritatingly composed. He sat across from her at the too-long table and said nothing, simply ate his eggs and toast, while she pushed food around her plate and tried not to stare at him. "You are not sleeping well," he observed finally. "How would you know?" "Mrs. Brennick reports that your candle burned past midnight, and again past 2, and again past 4. Mrs. Brennick is a spy. Mrs. Brennick is concerned, as am I. Your concern is unnecessary." "Noted." He sipped his coffee, watching her over the rim. "What keeps you awake?" "Everything," she wanted to say. "The strangeness of this house, the weight of your attention, the fact that I am living in the home of a man who has apparently been waiting for me for 4 years, and I do not know whether to be flattered or terrified." "The bed is unfamiliar," she said instead. "I will adjust. There are books in the library. Reading often helps. I am not a child to be soothed with bedtime stories." "I did not suggest you were." His tone remained mild, but something flickered in his eyes. "I was merely offering a resource. Dunmore's library is quite extensive. My mother was a voracious reader." The mention of his mother shifted something between them. His expression softened, just slightly, just enough for Sibylla to glimpse the grief beneath the granite. "How did she die?" The question came out before she could stop it. "A fever. Last winter." He set down his coffee cup with careful precision. "She was ill for 3 weeks. I sent for every physician in the county. None of them could help. I'm sorry. Are you? Yes. She met his eyes, surprised to find she meant it. Losing a parent is a particular kind of devastation. I know. I lost my mother when I was 15. Something passed between them. Recognition, perhaps. The shared language of grief. She would have liked you, the Duke said, his voice low. My mother. She had no patience for simpering debutantes. She preferred women with sharp tongues and sharper minds. Then I am sorry I never had the chance to meet her. So am I. He rose from the table, the moment of vulnerability closing like a door. The storm shows no sign of breaking. I suggest you find ways to occupy yourself. The library is at your disposal, as is the music room and the conservatory. I will be in my study if you require anything. And if I require conversation? He paused, glancing back. Do you? She did not know how to answer. She had spent weeks in London surrounded by people who would not look at her, would not speak to her, and would not acknowledge her existence except to whisper behind their fans. Solitude should have been a relief. Instead, it felt like a continuation of her punishment. Perhaps, she admitted. Then join me for tea at 4. It was not quite an invitation, not quite a command, something in between. We can practice the art of civil discourse. You assume I know how to be civil. I assume you know how to pretend. His mouth curved. You survived 4 London seasons. That requires considerable acting skill. He left before she could respond. Sibylla spent the morning exploring the house. It was larger than she had expected. A labyrinth of corridors and closed doors and unexpected stairs that seemed designed to confuse. The library was indeed extensive. 3 floors of books stretching toward a vaulted ceiling, with ladders on rails and leather chairs positioned near windows that overlooked the frozen moor. She selected a novel at random, something gothic and melodramatic, and tried to read. But her mind kept drifting. 4 years. He had remembered her for 4 years, from a single glimpse across a crowded ballroom, had asked her brother for an introduction and been refused, had watched her leave with another man and decided not to pursue, but he had not forgotten. When she had been ruined, when the scandal broke and her name became poison, he had written to Phineas, had offered sanctuary, had prepared rooms and dresses, and waited for her to arrive like a spider waiting for a fly. Except spiders did not wait 4 years. Spiders did not furnish guest rooms with fresh linens and favorite colors. Spiders did not offer tea and civil discourse, and soften when speaking of dead mothers. She did not know what Kaelin Vane was, but spider did not seem quite right. Tea at 4 was held in a small sitting room near the conservatory, warm and bright with winter light. The Duke was already there when she arrived, standing by the window, watching the snow fall. You found the library, he said without turning. How do you know? You smell like old books and dust. He turned, and his expression was almost amused. My mother's favorite perfume, she used to say. Is that why you suggested I visit? So I would smell like her. I suggested it because you needed something to occupy your mind, besides suspicion. He gestured to the settee. Sit. Mrs. Brennick has outdone herself with the sandwiches. She sat, and he sat across from her, and for a moment neither spoke. The fire crackled. The snow fell. The house groaned against the wind. Why did my brother refuse your introduction? Sibylla asked finally. 4 years ago, at the Whitfield ball. You asked to meet me, and he said no. Why? You should ask him. I am asking you. He poured tea with practiced grace, the movements of a man who had done this countless times. Phineas believed I was unsuitable, too northern, too remote, too unlikely to provide you with the London life you deserved. And yet he sent me to you now. Circumstances have changed. He handed her a cup. You no longer deserve a London life in his estimation. You deserve to disappear. The words stung, even though they were true. You make my brother sound very cold. Your brother is pragmatic. He calculated the cost of defending you against the weight of scandal and decided you were not worth the price. His eyes met hers. I calculated differently. Why? Because I saw something in you 4 years ago. Something bright and fierce and utterly wasted on a society that values compliance over courage. He set down his cup. You laughed in that ballroom, Miss Thorne, and everyone turned to stare, and most of them were offended by your audacity. But I was enchanted by it. Enchanted. The word hung between them, dangerous and sweet. You don't know me, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You saw me laugh once. That is not the same as knowing someone. Then let me know you now. He leaned forward, intensity burning in those gray eyes. You are trapped here, as you keep reminding me. We have weeks, perhaps months, before the road's clear, and you can return to whatever remains of your life. Use that time. Talk to me. Fight with me. Tell me I am wrong about everything I have assumed about you. But do not sit in that library, pretending to read Gothic novels, while your mind eats itself alive with suspicion. She should have been offended, should have retreated into cold politeness and safe distance. Instead, she felt something crack in her chest, some wall she had built in the week since her ruin, when everyone she trusted had turned away. What if you are not wrong? She whispered. What if I am exactly what you think I am? Then I will be very fortunate indeed. His voice dropped, rough and low. Because I have been waiting 4 years for exactly this. The fire popped, the snow fell, and Sibylla Thorne, who had spent weeks believing she was worthless and ruined and utterly alone, felt something dangerous stir in her chest. Something like hope. She crushed it immediately. Hope was how she had ended up here, trusting men who did not deserve trust, believing in futures that evaporated like morning mist. I will not be seduced, she said flatly. Whatever game you are playing, whatever long strategy this represents, I am not a piece to be moved on your board. I have never thought of you as a piece. Then what am I? He stood, moving to the window, his back to her. The light caught the sharp planes of his face, the tension in his shoulders. A question I have not been able to answer for 4 years, he said, his voice low. A face I cannot forget. A laugh that echoes in empty ballrooms long after the candles have burned out. She waited. He turned, and his expression was stripped raw. You are the reason I have not married, Miss Thorne. The reason I have refused every alliance my family has proposed, every suitable match, every practical arrangement. Because none of them were you. The words hit her like a wave. That is madness, she breathed. Yes. He smiled, and it was bitter and beautiful and utterly lost. I am aware. The clock on the mantel chimed 5. The spell broke. The Duke straightened, his mask sliding back into place. Supper is at 7, he said, his voice once again controlled. I suggest you rest before then. He left without another word. Sibylla sat in the empty sitting room, surrounded by cooling tea and untouched sandwiches, and wondered if she had just made everything better or infinitely worse. On the 5th day, the snow stopped. Sibylla stood at her window, watching the pale winter sun struggle through the clouds, and felt something loosen in her chest. The roads would clear soon. She could leave. She could escape this strange captivity and return to what? London would not have her. Phineas would not welcome her. The continent was an option, she supposed, if she could find the funds, if she could stomach the exile. A carriage appeared on the horizon. She watched it approach, black against the white landscape, moving slowly through the drifts. Not the mail coach. Something finer. Someone important. By the time she descended to the entrance hall, the Duke was already there, his expression fixed and unreadable. You should return to your rooms, he said without looking at her. Why? Who is arriving? No one you need concern yourself with. If I am to hide like a shameful secret, I would at least like to know why. His shoulders tensed. Before he could respond, the front door swung open, and a woman swept inside on a gust of frozen air. She was beautiful. That was the first thing Sibylla noticed. Golden-haired, porcelain-skinned, dressed in traveling clothes that probably cost more than everything Sibylla owned combined. She moved with the effortless grace of someone who had never been told she was unwelcome anywhere. Kaylin. The woman's voice was warm, familiar. You did not answer my letters. I was occupied. For 3 months, she laughed, a musical sound that made Sibylla feel suddenly shabby and small. Your mother would be appalled by your manners. My mother would understand the circumstances. The woman's gaze slid past him, landing on Sibylla with the precision of an arrow. Blue eyes, sharp and assessing, a smile that did not reach them. And who is this? Sibylla lifted her chin. Sibylla Thorne. I am a guest of his grace. A guest? The woman repeated the word as if tasting it. How delightful. I was not aware Kaylin entertained guests. He has always been so terribly solitary. Lady Fenella Ashbrook, the Duke said flatly. Miss Thorne. Now that introductions are complete, perhaps we could move this conversation somewhere warmer. Lady Fenella Ashbrook. The name tugged at something in Sibylla's memory. She had heard it before, whispered in London drawing rooms, attached to speculation about the Duke of Dunmore's marriage prospects. The Ashbrook family had been angling for a connection with the Vanes for years. Lady Fenella was their most valuable piece. I did not realize you were expecting company, Sibylla said carefully. I was not. The Duke's voice could have frozen the fire in the hearth. Lady Fenella has arrived unannounced. Spontaneity is a virtue, Kaylin. You used to appreciate that about me. Lady Fenella swept past them both, heading for the drawing room as if she owned the house. I will take tea. Have Mrs. Brennick send up something warm. And do stop glowering, darling. It makes you look positively ancient. The Duke did not move. His eyes remained fixed on some middle distance, his hands clenched at his sides. How long will she be staying? Sibylla asked in a low voice. I do not know. Can you not send her away? Her father is the Earl of Ashbrook. Her family has been allied with mine for 3 generations. Sending her away would cause a diplomatic incident that would echo through every drawing room in England. Finally, he looked at her, and his expression was bleak. I'm sorry. This complicates things significantly. Things were already complicated. They just became worse. He moved toward the drawing room, then paused. You should join us. If you hide in your rooms, she will wonder why. Better to establish your presence openly. And what presence is that? Guest? Companion? Charity case? Friend. The word came out rough. You are my friend, Miss Thorne. That is the story we will tell. Friend. After everything he had confessed, after the 4 years of waiting, after the blue dress and the watching, and the words that had kept her awake every night since. Friend. Of course, she said coolly. What else would I be? She walked past him into the drawing room without waiting for his response. Lady Fenella had already arranged herself on the settee, like a portrait come to life. She looked up as Sibylla entered, that sharp, assessing gaze sweeping over her once more. Miss Thorne, do sit. I find I am desperately curious about you. I'm not particularly interesting. Nonsense. Any woman who has captured Kaylin's attention is fascinating by definition. Lady Fenella patted the cushion beside her. Come, tell me everything. How did you meet? How long have you been here? Are you quite ruined, or merely slightly damaged? The question was delivered with a smile, but the blade beneath it was unmistakable. I am a family friend, Sibylla said, remaining standing. I came north for my health. Your health. How convenient. Lady Fenella's eyes glittered. And is it improving? Your health? Slowly. I imagine the climate helps. So bracing. So remote. She glanced toward the door as the Duke entered. So isolated from prying eyes and wagging tongues. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Fenella. The Duke's voice was warning. I am merely making conversation, darling. Miss Thorne and I are becoming fast friends. Are we not, Miss Thorne? Sibylla forced a smile. The fastest. Tea arrived. Conversation continued in the same vein, all barbed pleasantries and veiled accusations. Lady Fenella dominated the room with practiced ease, touching the Duke's arm, laughing at his silences, referencing shared memories that Sibylla could not access. They had history. That much was obvious, the kind of history that came from years of acquaintance, from families that had orbited each other since childhood. Lady Fenella knew which books he preferred, which wines he favored, which topics made him retreat into stony silence. She knew him in ways Sibylla never would. You must stay for supper, Lady Fenella said, as the tea things were cleared away. Both of you. We have so much to discuss, Kaelin. Your father's letter, for one. The arrangements he proposed. Arrangements? Sibylla's stomach dropped. We can discuss that privately, the Duke said. Why? We are all friends here. Miss Thorne will not mind. Lady Fenella turned that glittering smile on Sibylla. Will you, Miss Thorne? You do not mind hearing about Kaelin's marriage prospects? The room went very still. I was not aware His Grace had marriage prospects, Sibylla said carefully. Oh, but he does. He has had them for years. Our families have been negotiating since we were children. Lady Fenella leaned forward, conspiratorial. It is merely a matter of settling the terms. His father is quite eager, you know. The Duke Senior, I mean. Kaelin's father. He wants an heir before he dies, and he is not getting any younger. Fenella. The Duke's voice was ice. That is enough. Is it? I thought Miss Thorne should understand the situation, as your friend. The word dripped with implication. She would not want to develop any inappropriate attachments, would she? That would be so terribly awkward for everyone. Sibylla rose. Her legs felt unsteady, but she forced them to hold. If you will excuse me, I find I am fatigued from the conversation. Of course, darling. Rest well. Lady Fenella's smile was triumphant. We will see you at supper. Sibylla walked out of the drawing room with her head high and her heart hammering. She made it to the stairs, to the corridor, to her bedroom door. Then she leaned against the wall and tried to remember how to breathe. Marriage prospects, arrangements, an heir before his father died. The Duke of Dunmore was promised to Lady Fenella Ashbrook, had been promised, perhaps for years. And Sibylla was just a distraction, a charity case, a ruined woman hiding in his house while he waited for his real future to arrive. She had been a fool to feel anything, a fool to hope. The crack in her chest widened into a chasm. Supper was a battlefield. Lady Fenella commanded the conversation with relentless charm, steering every topic back to her shared history with the Duke. Childhood summers at neighboring estates. Balls where they had danced together. The time he had pulled her from a frozen pond and carried her home in his arms. He was my hero that day, Lady Fenella said, reaching across the table to touch his hand. I have never forgotten it. The Duke withdrew his hand to reach for his wineglass. We were children. It was instinct, not heroism. You are too modest, Kaelin. You have always been too modest. Lady Fenella turned to Sibylla, who had been forcing herself to eat small bites of food she could not taste. Do you not find him terribly modest, Miss Thorne, for a man of his position? I find him many things, Sibylla said carefully. Modest is not the first word that comes to mind. Lady Fenella's eyes narrowed slightly. Oh? And what word would you choose? Complicated. Complicated. Lady Fenella laughed, that musical sound that grated on Sybilla's nerves. How diplomatic. I would have said brooding. Or perhaps difficult. He has always been terribly difficult, have you not, darling? So I am told. The Duke's voice was flat. Miss Thorne, you have barely touched your meal. I find my appetite diminished. You should eat. You need your strength. For what? Lady Fenella interjected. Is Miss Thorne engaged in strenuous activities? Long walks on the moor, perhaps? Vigorous reading in the library? The mockery was barely concealed. Miss Thorne is recovering from an illness, the Duke said coldly. She requires rest and nourishment, not interrogation. I was merely expressing concern, as one does for a friend. Lady Fenella's smile sharpened. We are all friends here, are we not? Are we? Sybilla set down her fork. I confess I am uncertain. Friends do not typically arrive unannounced to stake claims on another friend's future husband. The table went silent. Lady Fenella's expression flickered, surprise breaking through the polished facade. I beg your pardon? You have spent the entire evening reminding everyone present that you and His Grace have an understanding, that your families have arrangements, that you are, in essence, already his. Sybilla met her gaze steadily. If that is true, then I offer my congratulations. But if it is not, then I find your behavior remarkably presumptuous. Miss Thorne. The Duke's voice held warning. No, let her speak. Lady Fenella's eyes had gone cold. I am fascinated by her audacity, a woman of no reputation lecturing me on presumption. Tell me, Miss Thorne, what exactly is your position in this household? Guest? Companion? Or something more intimate? Fenella. The Duke rose from his chair, his voice deadly soft. You will apologize. Apologize? For speaking the truth? Lady Fenella laughed, but there was no music in it now. All of London knows what Miss Thorne is, what she did with Lord Ashworth, what she offered him and was refused. She is ruined goods, Kaelin, and you have installed her in your home like a kept woman. I said apologize. I will not. Someone must speak plainly, since you refuse to. Lady Fenella stood, matching his posture. Your father sent me here to remind you of your obligations, to your family, to your title, to the alliance that has been planned for over a decade. You cannot hide in this frozen wasteland forever with your charitable project. Miss Thorne is not a project. Then what is she? Lady Fenella's voice rose. What is she to you, Kaelin? Because from where I stand, she looks like a woman you have brought into your home to warm your bed while you delay the inevitable. The Duke moved so quickly Sybilla barely registered it. One moment he was standing behind his chair. The next, he was beside Lady Fenella, his hand gripping her elbow, his face inches from hers. You will leave tomorrow, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. You will return to your father and tell him that no arrangement exists, no understanding, no alliance. I have told him this 12 times, and I will tell him again. I am not marrying you, Fenella. Not now. Not ever. Your father disagrees. My father does not control my choices. Does he not? Lady Fenella pulled her arm free, her expression twisted with fury. We shall see, Kaelin. When he arrives next week, we shall see who controls what. She swept out of the dining room, the door slamming behind her. Silence descended. The Duke stood where she had left him, his back to Sybilla, and his shoulders rigid with tension. The fire crackled. The candles flickered. The remains of their ruined supper cooled on their plates. Your father is coming here? Sybilla asked, her voice barely steady. Apparently. You did not know. I did not know. He turned finally, and his expression was ravaged. I'm sorry. For what she said to you, for all of it. Is it true? The arrangement with her family? My father wishes it were true. He has wished it for years. But I have never agreed. Never signed anything. Never made any promise. She seems quite certain. She is certain of what she wants. That is not the same as certainty about what she will get. He moved to the window, staring out at the darkness. I should have told you about her, about my father's expectations, about all of it. Why did you not? Because I wanted... He stopped, shaking his head. It does not matter what I wanted. Reality has arrived, as it always does. Sibylla rose from the table, moving toward him without quite deciding to. She stopped a few feet away, watching the tension in his spine, the way his hands gripped the windowsill. What did you want? She asked softly. Time. The word came out rough. I wanted time with you, without complications, without the weight of my family's expectations crushing everything before it could begin. Before what could begin? He turned, and his eyes were dark with something she could not name. You know what? She did know, had known since the night he told her about the Whitfield ball, about the blue dress, about the 4 years of waiting. But hearing it implied and hearing it spoken were different things. Say it, she whispered. Whatever this is, whatever we are doing, say it plainly. I am tired of subtext and implication. If I say it, I cannot take it back. Then don't take it back. He stared at her for a long moment, his hands clenched at his sides. The fire cast shadows across his face, hollowing his cheeks, darkening his eyes. I am falling in love with you. The words came out like they cost him something vital. I have been falling since the moment you stepped out of that carriage and demanded to know why you were here. Perhaps I have been falling since that ballroom, since that laugh, since the first moment I saw you and knew I was ruined for anyone else. Sibylla could not breathe. And it is hopeless, he continued, his voice cracking. Because my father will never accept you. Because society has already destroyed your reputation. Because I am the Duke of Dunmore, and you are a scandal, and everything I feel for you will only make your life harder. You do not get to decide that for me. Someone has to. You are too stubborn to protect yourself. And you are too afraid to let anyone protect you. They stood there, inches apart, the truth hanging between them like a blade. My father arrives in 1 week, the Duke said finally. When he does, everything will change. He will demand I send you away. He will threaten disinheritance if I refuse to marry Fenella. He will make your life here impossible. Then send me away now, before he arrives. I cannot. Why not? His hand came up, tracing the line of her cheek with a gentleness that made her chest ache. His thumb brushed across her skin, feather light. Because I am selfish, he whispered. Because I have waited 4 years, and I am not ready to let you go. Because every moment I have with you, even the difficult ones, is worth more than a lifetime of doing what I am supposed to do. Tears slipped down her cheeks. This cannot end well. I know. Your father will destroy us both. I know. Then why are we still standing here? He smiled, and it was the most broken, beautiful thing she had ever seen. Because I would rather have 1 week of this than 60 years of anything else. He kissed her forehead, soft and reverent, then stepped away. Get some rest, he said, his voice rough. Tomorrow will be complicated enough. He left her standing by the window, alone with the darkness and her racing heart. 1 week. She had 1 week before everything collapsed. It would have to be enough. Lady Fenella departed at dawn, her carriage cutting fresh tracks through the snow. Sibylla watched from her window as the vehicle disappeared over the ridge, taking with it the immediate threat, but leaving behind a heavier weight. The Duke's father was coming. In 6 days, everything would change. She found Kalen in the library, standing before the fire with a letter in his hands. His expression was distant, his gaze fixed on something far beyond the flames. "From your father?" she asked. "From my solicitor, confirming the terms my father intends to present." He did not look up. "Either I marry Lady Fenella by spring, or I am cut off entirely. No inheritance, no income, no access to the family estates." "Can he do that?" "The title will pass to me regardless. But the money, the lands, the investments, all of it is held in trust. He controls the purse strings until his death, and he can modify the terms as he sees fit." "So you would be Duke of Dunmore, with nothing but the title." "Essentially." He finally met her eyes. "This house would be sold to pay debts. The servants would be dismissed. The tenants would be left to whatever fate befalls them when a new owner arrives." The weight of it settled over her. This was not simply about him. It was about everyone who depended on him. The staff who had welcomed her, the farmers she had glimpsed from the windows, the entire fragile ecosystem that relied on the Duke of Dunmore to maintain its existence. "You should marry her," Sibylla said, her voice hollow. He went very still. "What?" "Lady Fenella, you should accept the arrangement, for the sake of everyone who depends on you." "You cannot be serious." "I am entirely serious." She forced the words out past the tightness in her chest. "I have been here less than a fortnight. These people have relied on your family for generations. Their livelihoods, their homes, their futures, all of it hangs on your decision. You cannot sacrifice all of that for someone you barely know." "I know you. You know a version of me, a woman you glimpsed at a ball, a scandal you rescued from disgrace. That is not the same as knowing someone, not truly." He crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping so close she could feel the heat of him. "Do you want me to marry her?" "What I want is irrelevant. Answer the question." "No." The word tore out of her. "No, I do not want you to marry her. I do not want you to touch her, or kiss her, or share a bed with her. The thought of it makes me want to break things." Her voice cracked. "But what I want does not matter. It has never mattered. I am ruined, Kalen. Worthless in the eyes of everyone who counts. You cannot throw away your entire life for someone society considers garbage. Society is wrong. Society does not care about being wrong. Society only cares about compliance." She stepped back, creating distance she did not want. "Your father is right. I am a liability, a complication. The longer I stay here, the more damage I cause." "You are not damage. You are the only thing in this house that feels alive. That is not enough. It is enough for me, but not for the people who depend on you." She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering despite the fire. "I watched my reputation burn, Kalen. I watched everyone I trusted turn away. I know what it costs to be associated with scandal, and I will not let you pay that price." He stared at her, his body rigid, his hands clenched at his sides. "So you would have me marry a woman I despise, live a life that feels like a slow death, all to protect tenants and servants who would never know the sacrifice?" "Yes." "No," he shook his head. "I refuse. You do not have that luxury. I have every luxury. I am a duke. I can do whatever I damn well please." "Then why are you not doing it?" Her voice rose. "Why are you standing here arguing with me instead of telling your father to take his ultimatum and choke on it? Why do you hesitate?" "Because I am terrified." The word hung between them, raw and bleeding. "Terrified of what?" she whispered. "Of everything." He ran a hand through his hair, the careful composure finally shattering. "Of losing this house, of failing everyone who depends on me, of becoming the kind of man my father is, cold and calculating and willing to sacrifice anything for the family name." He looked at her, and his eyes were wild. "But mostly, I am terrified of you. Of me? Of what you represent? Of what you make me feel? He stepped toward her again, closing the distance she had created. I spent 4 years convincing myself that what I felt at that ball was a passing fancy, an infatuation, something I would outgrow when I found a suitable match. But then you appeared in my entrance hall, and everything I had told myself was lies. Kaylin, I am terrified because you are everything I cannot have, and everything I have ever wanted, and I do not know how to choose between my duty and my heart. His voice broke. I have never known. That is why I have delayed the marriage, why I have refused every arrangement, why I have spent 3 years alone in this house, pretending I was content with solitude, because I was waiting for something I did not believe would ever arrive. I am not worth waiting for. You are worth more than you will ever believe. He took her face in both hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. You are brave and fierce, and so damn stubborn it drives me mad. You refuse to let society define you. You refuse to apologize for being too loud, too sharp, too alive. You laughed in a ballroom full of people who thought you should be quiet, and the sound of it has haunted me for 4 years. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You don't know me? Not really. Then let me know you. Give me time. Give me a chance to prove that what I feel is not infatuation, not rescue, not some fantasy built on a single moment. His thumbs brushed away her tears. Stay. Fight with me. Tell me I am wrong about everything. But do not ask me to marry someone else while you are standing right here, because I cannot do it. I am not strong enough. And if your father takes everything, then I will rebuild. With what? A ruined duke and a ruined woman? We would have nothing. We would have each other. His forehead pressed against hers. I know that sounds like a fairy tale. I know it is naive and impractical and probably doomed. But I would rather be poor and free with you than rich and miserable with her. She wanted to believe him. God help her. She wanted to believe that love could conquer consequence, that their feelings could outweigh the crushing weight of society and family and duty. But she had believed before, had trusted Marcus Ashworth when he whispered pretty words and made pretty promises, had learned the hard way that words meant nothing when tested against reality. I am afraid, she admitted, of trusting this, of trusting you. The last man I believed destroyed me, and I am not certain I could survive being destroyed again. I am not him. I know, but the fear does not care about logic. She pulled back just enough to see his face. I want to believe you. I want to stay and fight and have this mean something. But I have been wrong before, and the cost of being wrong again. I know. His hand slid to her shoulders, holding her gently. I know, and I am asking anyway. I'm asking you to take a risk on someone who has done nothing to earn your trust, except wait and hope, and make 1,000 plans that never came to anything because you were always somewhere else. What kind of plans? He laughed, broken and beautiful. Foolish plans. I was going to court you properly after the Whitfield ball. Was going to call on your family, send flowers, and do everything correctly. But your brother refused me. And then you were linked to Ashworth, and I told myself I had missed my chance. Why did you not try again, when Ashworth ended things? Because I thought you were in love with him. Everyone said so. They said your heart was broken when he rejected you. His eyes searched hers. Was it? Broken, I mean. She considered the question. She had spent months believing she was heartbroken, believing that Marcus's rejection had shattered her. But looking back now, from this distance, she could see the truth more clearly. My pride was broken, she said slowly. My standing, my sense of self. But my heart, she shook her head. I do not think I ever loved him. I loved the idea of him, the excitement. the danger of being wanted by someone unsuitable. And now? The question held everything. Now I am standing in a frozen library with a man who has waited 4 years for a woman he glimpsed once at a ball. She touched his face, tracing the sharp line of his jaw. And I think perhaps I am beginning to understand what it might feel like to love someone real. Not an idea, not a fantasy, but a complicated, difficult, terrifying person who looks at me like I am the answer to a question he has been asking his whole life. Is that a yes? It is a maybe. She smiled, watery and uncertain. It is a, I am willing to stay and find out. It is an, I am terrified, but I am choosing to be terrified with you instead of terrified alone. He kissed her. Not desperate this time, not the kind of kiss that preceded regret. This was slow and deliberate and achingly tender, the kind of kiss that asked permission and waited for an answer. She gave it, melting into him, letting herself feel what she had been fighting since the moment she stepped out of that carriage. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. Your father arrives in 6 days, she said. Yes. He will try to separate us. Yes. What do we do? The Duke smiled, and for the first time since she had met him, it reached his eyes. We fight like hell. She laughed despite herself. That does not sound like a plan. It is the only plan I have. He took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. Stay with me. Face him with me. Whatever happens, we face it together. Together. The word felt foreign in her mouth, unfamiliar after so many months of solitude and abandonment. But standing here, with his hand in hers, and his eyes on her face, and the fire warming their backs, it also felt like coming home. Together, she agreed. 6 days. They had 6 days to prepare for war. She intended to make them count. The days that followed existed outside of time. They walked the frozen grounds together, their breath clouding in the winter air, talking about everything and nothing. She told him about her childhood, about her mother's death, about the years of trying to be what society expected and always falling short. He told her about the weight of the title, about his mother's strength and quiet grace, about the loneliness that had settled into his bones like an old injury. They read together in the library, side by side before the fire, their shoulders touching. They took meals together without the pretense of formality, laughing at private jokes, arguing about books and politics, and whether the cook's rabbit stew was superior to her venison pie. They did not kiss again. Not after that moment in the library. Some unspoken agreement kept them careful, kept them waiting, as if acknowledging what was building between them would break the spell. But on the 4th night, with only 2 days remaining before his father's arrival, the spell broke anyway. Sibila could not sleep. The wind howled against her windows, rattling the glass, filling her room with cold drafts that the fire could not chase away. She wrapped herself in a shawl and wandered the corridors, too restless to stay still, too anxious about what was coming to close her eyes. She found herself outside the Duke's study without quite meaning to arrive there. Light flickered beneath the door. He was awake, too. She knocked. Enter. He was sitting at his desk, papers scattered before him, a glass of whiskey at his elbow. He looked up when she entered, and something shifted in his expression, something hungry and tired and desperately controlled. You should be sleeping, he said. So should you. I have correspondence to manage. My father's arrival requires certain preparations. At 2 in the morning? The hour seemed irrelevant. He set down his pen. Why are you wandering the halls? The wind, the cold, the fact that in 2 days your father arrives to tear apart everything we have built. She moved into the room, pulling her shawl tighter. I thought perhaps you might have answers, or at least company in the uncertainty. I have neither answers nor certainty, but company I can provide. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Sit. I will pour you something warm. She did not sit. Instead, she moved around the desk, stopping beside his chair, looking down at the papers scattered across the surface. Letters from his solicitor, financial statements, a map of the estate with certain properties circled in red. "What are these?" she asked. "Contingencies." His voice was flat. "If my father follows through on his threats, there are certain assets I can liquidate. Properties that are mine outright, inherited from my mother's side. Enough to maintain the household staff for a year, perhaps 2, while I find other means of income. You are planning for him to disinherit you. I am planning for every possibility." He looked up at her, and his eyes were shadowed with exhaustion. "I will not be caught unprepared. Whatever happens, whatever he demands, I will have options. Options that do not include marrying Lady Fenella. Options that include you." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. "Kaylin." She did not know what she intended to say. His name was simply the only word that made sense. "I know." He rose from the chair, suddenly too close, his body radiating warmth in the cold room. "I know this is madness. I know we agreed to wait, to be careful, to face my father together before making any decisions. But I am tired of being careful." "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I have spent 4 years waiting for you, and I don't want to spend another moment pretending I don't want this." His hand came up, brushing a strand of hair from her face, with that devastating gentleness. "I am saying that whatever happens in 2 days, whatever my father threatens or demands, I want tonight. I want you, even if it is the only night we ever have." She should have refused, should have reminded him of the consequences, the scandal, the dozen reasons why this was a terrible idea. But she had spent months being sensible, being careful, being the woman society expected her to be. And where had it gotten her? Ruined anyway. Exiled anyway. Alone anyway. At least this choice would be hers. "Yes," she whispered. He kissed her like a man drowning, like she was air, and he had been holding his breath for 4 years. She kissed him back just as desperately, her fingers tangling in his hair, pulling him closer, closer, until there was no space left between them. They did not make it to the bedroom. The study floor was hard and cold, but neither of them cared. Clothes fell away in pieces, buttons and laces, and propriety discarded like wrapping paper. His hands learned the shape of her mouth learned the taste of him. They moved together in the firelight, gasping and urgent and achingly tender by turns. Afterwards, they lay tangled on the rug before the dying fire, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "This changes everything," she said, her voice soft. "I know. If anyone discovers what we have done, there will be no going back. My reputation will be beyond repair. Yours will be damaged forever." "I know." His arm tightened around her. "Do you regret it?" She considered the question. Her body ached in unfamiliar ways. Her heart felt cracked open, vulnerable, exposed. Everything she had built to protect herself had been stripped away in a matter of hours. "No," she said finally. "I regret nothing." "Good." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "Neither do I." They lay in silence, listening to the wind and the fire and the beating of each other's hearts. The flames cast dancing shadows across the walls, and for a moment, the world beyond this room ceased to exist. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we face my father together. Now we tell him that I have made my choice, and no threat or ultimatum will change it." His voice hardened. "And if he cannot accept that, then he loses a son. Because I will not lose you. Not now. Not after waiting so long to find you." "You make it sound simple." "It is simple. Not easy, but simple." He shifted, propping himself up to look at her. His face was soft in the firelight, younger than she had ever seen him. I love you, Sibylla Thorne. I have loved you since a ballroom and a blue dress, and a laugh that made me believe the world might contain something worth wanting. And I will spend the rest of my life proving that I am worthy of you, if you will let me. Her eyes burned with unshed tears. You are already worthy. Then let me prove it anyway. He smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Let me spend 60 years showing you that I meant every word. 60 years is a long time. Not nearly long enough. He kissed her again, slow and sweet, and she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, this could work. That love could be enough. That they could build something real from the ashes of their ruined expectations. The fire burned low, the wind howled, and somewhere in the darkness, a clock struck 3. In less than 40 hours, his father would arrive. But for now, they had this. Each other. 1 hour, she said. Then I am coming down, whether you send for me or not. 1 hour. He released her, stepping back as the front door swung open. The man who entered was exactly what Sibylla had expected, and somehow worse. Tall like his son, but broader, heavier, his presence filling the entrance hall like a storm cloud. His eyes were the same gray as Kaylin's, but colder, sharper, devoid of any warmth. Father. Kaylin's voice was carefully neutral. You were early. I grew tired of waiting for you to come to your senses. The elder duke's gaze swept the hall, cataloging, assessing. Where is she? The scandal you have installed in my house. Miss Thorne is a guest, and this is my house, not yours. A technicality that can be corrected. His father moved toward the drawing room, expecting to be followed. We have much to discuss. Lady Fenella tells me you have been remarkably foolish. Sibylla did not wait to hear more. She retreated up the stairs, her heart hammering against her ribs, and locked herself in her room as instructed. 1 hour. She would give him 1 hour. The hour stretched into 2. Mrs. Brennick brought tea at some point, her expression carefully blank. Sibylla did not drink it. She paced the room, listened at the door, pressed her ear to the floor, as if she might hear what was happening in the drawing room below. Silence. Muffled voices. More silence. When the knock finally came, she was already at the door. But it was not Kaylin who stood in the corridor. It was Mrs. Brennick, her face pale and pinched. His Grace requests that you join them in the drawing room, miss. Which His Grace? The elder, miss. Mrs. Brennick's eyes flickered with something like sympathy. I'm sorry. Sibylla straightened her spine and descended the stairs. The drawing room was cold despite the fire. The Duke of Dunmore, the elder, stood before the mantel, dominating the space with sheer presence. Kaylin stood by the window, his back to the room, his shoulders rigid with tension. Miss Thorne. The elder Duke's voice was silk over steel. How kind of you to join us. I was told my presence was requested. It was. I wish to see for myself the woman who has so thoroughly compromised my son's judgment. He circled her slowly, examining her like livestock at auction. You were pretty enough, I suppose, in a common sort of way. Father. Kaylin's voice was warning. Do not interrupt. We are having a conversation. The elder Duke stopped before her, his eyes boring into hers. Tell me, Miss Thorne, what exactly do you believe you are doing here? I am a guest of your son. You are a scandal hiding from consequences. There is a difference. He smiled, and it was the coldest thing she had ever seen. I have made inquiries about you, about your family, about the unfortunate business with Lord Ashworth. Her stomach dropped. That is none of your concern. Everything that affects my son is my concern, and you, Miss Thorne, affect him rather significantly. He moved to the sideboard, pouring himself a drink with deliberate slowness. Ashworth tells a very different story than the one circulating in society. He claims you pursued him relentlessly, that you offered yourself to him in exchange for marriage. That when he refused, you fabricated accusations to destroy his reputation. That is a lie, is it? He turned, glass in hand. Lord Ashworth is from an excellent family. His word carries weight. Yours carries nothing. Father, enough. Kalen spun from the window, his control finally cracking. You will not speak to her this way. I will speak to her however I choose. She is a fortune hunter who has latched onto my son, and I will not allow her to drag this family into disgrace. She is not a fortune hunter. She is the woman I intend to marry. The words dropped into the room like stones into still water. The elder Duke went very still. I beg your pardon? You heard me. Kalen moved to stand beside Sibylla, his hand finding hers. I am going to marry Miss Thorne, with or without your blessing, with or without your money, with or without this house. You would throw away everything, your inheritance, your position, your duty to this family. For her? Yes. Silence stretched between them, thick and poisonous. Then the elder Duke laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. Very well, he said softly. If that is your choice, then I will make mine. He set down his glass. As of this moment, you are no longer my heir. Your allowance is terminated. Your access to family funds is revoked. You have 1 week to vacate this property before I begin legal proceedings to reclaim it. You cannot do that. I can, and I will. His eyes were ice. You have chosen a scandal over your family. Now live with the consequences. He walked past them both, pausing at the door. Miss Thorne, he said without turning, I hope you understand what you have cost my son. I hope you are worth the price he is paying. Then he was gone. Sibylla stood frozen, Kalen's hand still gripping hers, the weight of what had just happened crushing her chest. Kalen! Her voice came out strangled. What have you done? What I should have done years ago. But his voice was hollow, his face pale. I chose you. You chose ruin, for both of us. I chose freedom. She pulled her hand from his, stepping back. This is not freedom. This is destruction. You have lost everything because of me. I have lost nothing that matters. Your home, your income, your future. Buildings and money and expectations. He reached for her, but she retreated further. Sibylla, please. This is what we wanted. This is what we agreed. I agreed to face him with you. I did not agree to watch you destroy yourself. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Your father is right. I am not worth this price. Do not say that. It is true. I am a scandal, a ruined woman, and now I have ruined you as well. She wrapped her arms around herself, chilled despite the fire burning nearby. I should never have stayed. I should have left the moment I realized what you wanted from me. What I wanted was you. What I want is still you. And what I want is for you to have a future. She forced herself to meet his eyes. Go to your father. Apologize. Tell him you made a mistake, that you were confused, that the isolation drove you to temporary madness. Marry Lady Fenella. Save your inheritance. No. Kalen, please. No. He closed the distance between them, gripping her shoulders. I will not apologize for loving you. I will not pretend this was a mistake. And I will not marry a woman I despise to please a father who has never seen me as anything but an heir to be controlled. Then what will we do? We have nothing. We are nothing. We have each other. His hands framed her face, forcing her to look at him. Is that not enough? She wanted to say yes, wanted to believe that love could sustain them, that they could build a life from the wreckage of everything they had lost. But she had been poor before, had watched her family struggle after her father's investments failed, before Phineas rebuilt their fortune through careful maneuvering. She knew what poverty looked like, felt like, and tasted like. She was not certain love could survive it. "I need time," she whispered. "I need to think. Sibylla, please." She stepped back, and this time he let her go. "Just give me tonight. Let me understand what has happened. Let me decide what I can live with." His face crumpled, then smoothed into careful blankness. The walls she had spent weeks dismantling rebuilt themselves in an instant. "Of course," he said, his voice flat. "Take whatever time you need." He turned and walked out of the drawing room without looking back. Sibylla sank onto the settee, buried her face in her hands, and wept. 3 days passed in silence. Sibylla took her meals in her room. Kaylin took his in the study. They passed each other in corridors without speaking, without touching, without acknowledging the chasm that had opened between them. The elder Duke had departed the morning after his ultimatum, but his presence lingered like poison in the air. Mrs. Brennick moved through the house with a stricken expression, packing silver and valuables into crates as if preparing for a siege. The other servants whispered in corners, their futures suddenly uncertain. On the 4th morning, a letter arrived. Sibylla was in the library, staring at a book she had not read a single word of, when Mrs. Brennick appeared with the post. "For you, miss." The housekeeper's voice was gentle. "From London." The handwriting was Phineas's. She tore it open with trembling fingers. "Dearest sister," she read, "word has reached London of your situation at Dunmore Hall. I do not know how the news escaped, but it has, and the consequences are severe. Lord Ashworth has renewed his campaign against your reputation, claiming that your presence in the Duke's household proves everything he ever said about your character. I am writing to offer you a choice. Return to London immediately. I will arrange passage to the continent, where you can disappear entirely. A small allowance will be provided, enough to live modestly in Italy or perhaps France. You would never return to England, but you would be safe from further scandal. Or remain where you are and accept the consequences. If you choose the Duke, you choose exile from our family as well. I cannot be associated with a sister who has destroyed a noble house through her machinations. The choice is yours, but make it quickly. The wolves are circling, and I cannot protect you forever." Your brother, Phineas Sibylla, read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully, placed it in the fire, and watched it burn. She found Kaylin in his study, surrounded by papers and legal documents. He looked up when she entered, and his face was haggard, exhaustion etched into every line. "My brother has written," she said. "He offers me passage to the continent, a chance to disappear." Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, fear, resignation. "And what did you tell him?" "I burned the letter." He went very still. "What?" "I burned it." She moved into the room, stopping before his desk. "Because I have spent 3 days thinking about what I can live with, and I've realized that the answer is not exile. The answer is not running away. The answer is not abandoning the only person who has ever believed I was worth fighting for. Sibylla, I was afraid." Her voice cracked. "I am still afraid. But I am more afraid of spending the rest of my life wondering what might have been if I had stayed." She reached across the desk, taking his hand. "You chose me. Now, I am choosing you. Whatever comes, wherever we end up, I am choosing this." He stared at her, his expression working, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "My father's solicitor sent word this morning," he said roughly. "The legal proceedings to reclaim the estate will take months. In the meantime, we have limited access to my mother's inheritance, enough to maintain a small household somewhere. Not here, not in London, but somewhere. Where? I have a small property in Cornwall. A cottage, really, nothing grand. But it is mine outright, inherited from my grandmother. No one can take it." He gripped her hand tighter. "We could start there, build something, find a way forward. A cottage in Cornwall. She laughed, watery and uncertain. That is quite a change from Dunmore Hall. It is quite a change from everything. He rose, circling the desk to stand before her. But I would rather live in a cottage with you than in a palace without you. You are certain? I have never been more certain of anything. He took her face in both hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. I love you, Sibylla. I have loved you for 4 years, and I will love you for 40 more, and I do not care if we have nothing but each other, because you are everything I have ever wanted. She kissed him. It was desperate and messy, and tasted like salt and hope. When they broke apart, he was smiling. There is one thing we must do before we leave, he said. What? Face my father, publicly, on his own ground. His eyes hardened. He has spread lies about you, about us, about what happened here. If we disappear to Cornwall without answering those lies, they will follow us forever. What are you proposing? The Ashworth ball is in 3 days. Every family of consequence will be there, including my father, including Lady Fenella, including your brother. His expression grew fierce. I am proposing that we attend, that we face them all, that we make it absolutely clear that we have chosen each other, and no amount of scandal or disinheritance will change that. That is madness. That is strategy. He smiled, and it was fierce and determined. If we hide, we are guilty. If we appear, we are defiant. And defiance, my love, is much harder to destroy than guilt. She considered it. The risk, the exposure, the possibility that they would walk into that ballroom and be torn apart by society's teeth, but also the possibility that they would walk in together, unashamed, unbroken, and prove to everyone watching that love could survive anything. Very well, she said, her voice steady. We will attend the Ashworth ball. Together? Together. He kissed her again, and this time it tasted like victory. The Ashworth ball was a glittering battlefield. Sibylla descended from their hired carriage on Kaelin's arm, her heart hammering so hard she was certain everyone could hear it. She wore the blue dress, the one that had been waiting for her at Dunmore Hall, altered slightly by Mrs. Brennick's clever fingers. It fit perfectly. It had always fit perfectly. The entrance hall was ablaze with candlelight. Music drifted from the ballroom above. Guests turned as they entered, whispers spreading like wildfire. The Duke of Dunmore. With that woman. Did you hear what his father said? Shameless. Absolutely shameless. Kaelin's hand tightened on hers. Ignore them. I intend to. They climbed the stairs together, every eye in the house following their progress. The ballroom doors opened before them, and the music stuttered, then resumed as 300 faces turned to stare. Courage, Kaelin murmured. Always. They stepped into the light. The first hour was torture. No one spoke to them. No one approached. They stood alone at the edge of the dance floor, surrounded by whispers and pointed glances, and the cold shoulders of everyone who had once considered them worthy of acknowledgement. Then Lord Ashworth appeared. He was handsome still, in that polished, practiced way that had once made Sibylla's heart race. Now it made her stomach turn. Miss Thorne, he said, his voice carrying deliberately. What a surprise. I had heard you were hiding in the north, nursing your broken heart. You heard incorrectly. She met his eyes steadily. My heart is quite intact. Is it? Even after everything that passed between us. He smiled, and it was cruel. I must confess, I am surprised you dare show your face in society. After the things you offered me, the things I refused. The things you fabricated, you mean? Kaelin's voice was ice. The lies you spread to destroy a woman who had the audacity to reject your advances. The whispers intensified. People drew closer, eager for spectacle. Lies? Ashworth laughed. I assure you, everything I said about Miss Thorne was the absolute truth. She pursued me relentlessly, offered herself to me in exchange for marriage. When I declined, she manufactured accusations to punish me for my refusal. That is a lie. Sibylla's voice rang clear, and everyone in this room knows it. Do they? Ashworth's eyes glittered. Your reputation speaks for itself, Miss Thorne. Ruined. Exiled. And now attached to a duke who has been disinherited for his association with you. Tell me, what innocent woman inspires such destruction? What honorable man spreads such venom? Kaelin stepped forward, placing himself between Sibylla and her accuser. I have known Miss Thorne for years. I have watched you slander her name across every drawing room in London, and I have heard the truth from people who actually witnessed your behavior. What truth? The truth that you pursued her, not the other way around. That you made promises you had no intention of keeping. That when she refused to become your mistress, you destroyed her reputation to punish her for her virtue. Kaelin's voice rose, carrying across the suddenly silent ballroom. You are a liar, Ashworth, a coward. And if you speak another word against Miss Thorne, I will ensure that every person in this room knows the full extent of your depravity. Ashworth's face contorted. You dare threaten me? I dare speak the truth, something you have never been capable of. The room held its breath. Then a new voice cut through the silence. He is right. Everyone turned. A woman had stepped forward from the crowd. Sibylla recognized her. Lady Helena Marchmain, her oldest friend, the one who had stopped answering her letters after the scandal broke. I was there, Lady Helena said, her voice trembling but clear. At the Thornwood House party 2 years ago. I saw Lord Ashworth corner Miss Thorne in the garden. I saw him make improper advances. I saw her refuse him, and I saw his face when she did. She looked at Ashworth with contempt. You were furious. You told her she would regret it, and then you spent the next 2 years ensuring that she did. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This is absurd, Ashworth sputtered. You are lying. I'm telling the truth, something I should have done months ago when the whispers started. Lady Helena turned to the room. I was a coward. I was afraid of being associated with scandal, so I abandoned my friend when she needed me most. But I will not be silent any longer. Another voice spoke up. Then another. Women who had witnessed Ashworth's behavior at various events. Men who had heard him boast about his plans to ruin Miss Thorne. Servants who had seen things they were never supposed to see. The tide turned. Ashworth's face went white, then red, then white again. He looked around the ballroom, searching for allies, and found none. This is a conspiracy, he said weakly. A plot to destroy me. This is justice. Kaelin's voice was lethally controlled. Long overdue. He turned his back on Ashworth and extended his hand to Sibylla. Dance with me. She took his hand. They walked onto the dance floor together, alone at first, surrounded by staring faces and suspended judgment. The orchestra hesitated, then began to play. A waltz, slow and beautiful. Kaelin pulled her into his arms, and they began to dance. One by one, other couples joined them. Lady Helena with her husband, a few brave souls who had never believed the rumors. Then more and more, until the floor was full, and Ashworth stood alone at the edge, watching his carefully constructed lies crumble around him. You did it, Sibylla whispered. We did it. Kaelin smiled down at her, and his eyes were bright with triumph. Together. She pressed her forehead to his shoulder and let herself breathe for the first time in months. The battle was not over. His father still loomed. Her brother still disapproved. Society would whisper for years about the scandal that wasn't. But tonight, they had won. And that was enough to build on. The elder duke found them on the terrace. Sibylla and Kaelin had retreated from the ballroom after the dancing, seeking fresh air and a moment of privacy. They stood at the balustrade, looking out at the moonlit gardens, her hand in his, their shoulders touching. Well played. The voice came from behind them. Sibylla turned to find the Duke of Dunmore, the elder, watching them with an expression she could not read. Father. Kaelin's voice was wary. I did not expect to see you here. I came to witness your destruction. Instead, I witnessed something rather different. The elder Duke moved onto the terrace, his footsteps deliberate. That was quite a performance in there, turning society against Ashworth, rallying witnesses, dancing together as if you had nothing to be ashamed of. We have nothing to be ashamed of. So it would appear. His father stopped before them, his eyes moving between Sibylla and his son. I underestimated you. Both of you. Is that an apology? It is an observation. The elder Duke's expression shifted, something complicated moving beneath the surface. I have spent my entire life building this family's reputation, protecting our legacy, ensuring that the Vane name commanded respect in every drawing room in England. And in one evening, you have done more for that reputation than I managed in 40 years. Sibylla blinked. I do not understand. You stood up to Ashworth. You exposed him for what he is. You proved that the Vane family will not be bullied, will not be intimidated, and will not bow to lies and manipulation. He looked at his son with something that might have been respect. That is the legacy I wanted to build. I simply went about it the wrong way. Kaelin stared at his father. Are you saying you were wrong? I am saying I miscalculated. The words came out stiff, forced. I believed that alliances and arrangements were the path to power. I believed that reputation was built on compliance and propriety. But watching you tonight, watching how you defended this woman, how she stood beside you without flinching, I realized that true power comes from conviction. And what does that mean for us? Sibylla asked. For the disinheritance? For the legal proceedings? The elder Duke was silent for a long moment. His face worked through emotions he seemed unaccustomed to showing. Doubt, regret, something that might have been shame. Then, slowly, he reached into his coat and withdrew a folded document. This is the order for legal proceedings against my son. The document that would strip him of his inheritance and his home. He held it out, and Kaelin took it with trembling hands. I am withdrawing it. The world tilted. Father, Kaelin's voice cracked. I do not understand. I am not giving you my blessing. Not yet. You have defied me, humiliated me, and chosen a woman I did not approve of. His eyes were hard, but something softer lurked beneath. But you have also proven that you are willing to fight for what you believe in, that you have the courage to stand against opposition, even when that opposition is your own father. That does not sound like forgiveness. It is not forgiveness. It is recognition. The elder Duke straightened his shoulders. You are my heir. You will be Duke of Dunmore one day. And when that day comes, you will need the kind of strength you displayed tonight. And Miss Thorne? The elder Duke turned to Sibylla, his gaze assessing. Miss Thorne has proven herself as well. She did not run. She did not hide. She stood in that ballroom and faced her accusers with more dignity than most noblewomen I have known. So you accept her? I accept that she is your choice. His voice softened, just slightly. And I accept that perhaps, in this matter, your judgment is better than mine. Sibylla could not speak, could not breathe. She had expected hatred, condemnation, rejection, not this careful, grudging acknowledgement. What happens now? She managed. Now you return to Dunmore Hall. You marry properly, with banns and witnesses, and all the tedious ceremony that society requires. The elder Duke moved toward the terrace doors. And you prove to me, every day for the rest of your lives, that I was not wrong to change my mind. He paused at the threshold. Kaylin. Yes, father? Your mother would have liked her. The words came out rough, almost painful. She would have approved of this choice. Then he was gone. Sibylla turned to Kaylin, her pulse racing. Did that just happen? I think so. He looked at the document in his hands, then at her, then back at the document. I think my father just gave us his blessing, in his own extremely uncomfortable way. She laughed, the sound bubbling up from somewhere deep and joyful. What do we do now? Now? He pulled her into his arms, lifting her off her feet and spinning her in a circle. Now we go home. Now we plan a wedding. Now we spend the rest of our lives being disgustingly happy just to spite everyone who said we could not. That sounds perfect. You are perfect. He set her down, cradling her face in his hands. You are brave and fierce, and so beautiful it makes my chest hurt. And I am going to spend every day of our marriage telling you so until you finally believe it. I might already believe it. Then I will tell you anyway. He kissed her, soft and sweet. Marry me, Sibylla Thorne, not because society expects it, not because scandal demands it, but because I love you and I cannot imagine my life without you in it. Is that a proposal? It is the only proposal that matters. He pulled back to look at her, his eyes shining in the moonlight. Say yes. Please. I have been waiting 4 years to ask you properly. She smiled, and it felt like the sun rising after an endless winter. Yes, she said. 1,000 times, yes. He kissed her again, and the moon shone down on them. And somewhere inside the ballroom, the music played on. They had won. Against scandal, against opposition, against a world that had tried to keep them apart. They had chosen each other, and that choice had changed everything. Now they would build a life together, a real life, full of challenges and triumphs, and the ordinary, extraordinary business of loving someone completely. It was everything she had never dared to hope for, and it was finally, beautifully hers. The wedding was held at Dunmore Hall on the first day of spring. Snow still dusted the moor, but the sun shone bright and warm, melting the ice that had covered the windows for so long. Sibylla stood in the chapel her mother-in-law had loved, wearing a dress of ivory silk, watching Kaylin wait for her at the altar with an expression of such naked joy that it made her heart ache. The guests were few, but fierce. Lady Helena, restored to friendship, and fiercer in her loyalty than ever. Mrs. Brennick, weeping happily in the front pew. A handful of neighbors who had never believed the rumors. And in the back, stiff and uncomfortable but present, the elder Duke of Dunmore. He had not smiled, had not offered congratulations or warm words, but he had come. That was enough. Phineas had not come, had not responded to the invitation, had not acknowledged her letters. That wound would take longer to heal, if it ever did. But standing here, with Kaylin's hands in hers, and the minister's words washing over them, Sibylla found she could live with her brother's silence. She had built a new family now, a chosen family, and they were worth more than any blood relation who had abandoned her when she needed them most. I do, she said when the moment came. I do, Kaylin echoed, his voice rough with emotion. The minister pronounced them husband and wife, and Kaylin kissed her, with 4 years of longing finally, fully realized. The wedding breakfast was held in the great hall, transformed by spring flowers and candlelight into something warm and welcoming. Sibylla sat beside her husband, letting the words settle into her bones, and watched their small gathering of guests celebrate with genuine joy. You look happy, Kaylin murmured in her ear. I am happy. She turned to look at him, this man who had waited 4 years for a woman he glimpsed once at a ball, who had fought his family and society, and his own fear to be with her. I did not know I could feel like this. Like what? Like everything I lost was worth it, because losing it brought me here, to you. He kissed her temple. I would go through it all again. Every moment of waiting, every argument with my father, every sleepless night, if it meant ending up exactly here. Even the frozen carriage ride, even that, he smiled. Though I will admit, I was rather hoping you would appreciate the drama of a snowstorm. Very romantic, I thought. You did not arrange the snowstorm. I arranged for you to arrive in winter. The snowstorm was a fortunate coincidence. His eyes glittered with mischief. Or perhaps fate agreeing with my planning. She laughed, the sound ringing through the hall. Several guests turned to look, smiling at the obvious joy between the newlyweds. I love you, she said, keeping her voice quiet for only him to hear. I do not think I have said it enough. I love you, Kaylin Vane. I love your stubbornness and your patience, and the way you look at me like I am the answer to a question you have been asking your whole life. You are the answer. He took her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. You have always been the answer. I simply had to wait for you to realize it. And now we have forever to figure out the rest. 2 years later, Sibylla stood at the window of Dunmore Hall, watching the first snow of winter drift across the moor. Behind her, a fire crackled in the hearth, and somewhere in the house, a child laughed. Their daughter, Marguerite, named for Kaylin's mother, 8 months old, with her father's gray eyes and her mother's stubborn chin. The most perfect, terrifying, wonderful thing Sibylla had ever helped create. Wool gathering again. She turned to find Kaylin in the doorway, Marguerite balanced on his hip. The baby was chewing on his cravat, drooling enthusiastically. Remembering, Sibylla said, the day I arrived, the carriage, the snow, the complete certainty that my life was over. And now I cannot imagine any other life. She crossed to them, taking Marguerite into her arms, pressing a kiss to her daughter's soft cheek. Now, I understand that being sent north to be forgotten was the best thing that ever happened to me. I prefer to think of it as being sent north to be found. Kaylin wrapped his arms around them both, his chin resting on Sibylla's shoulder. I had been waiting for you, after all. 4 years. I would have waited 40. She leaned back into his warmth, watching the snow fall, feeling the weight of her daughter in her arms, and her husband's heart beating against her back. The elder Duke had softened, gradually, grudgingly. He visited quarterly now, doting on Marguerite with a tenderness no one had expected. He never apologized for his earlier cruelty, but his presence spoke louder than words. Phineas had finally written a stiff letter of congratulation after Marguerite's birth. They were not reconciled, not fully, but the door was no longer closed. Time, Sibylla had learned, could heal almost anything. Lady Fenella had married elsewhere, a wealthy baron who appreciated her ambition. They seemed well matched. Sibylla wished her happiness, genuinely, and meant it. And Marcus Ashworth had retreated from society entirely after the revelations at the ball. Last she heard, he was living on a small estate in Scotland, his reputation as ruined as he had once tried to make hers. Justice, it seemed, had a sense of poetry. What are you thinking? Kaylin asked. That I am grateful, for all of it, even the painful parts. She turned her head to look at him. They brought me here, to you, to this. Regrets? None, she smiled. Not a single one. He kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing Dunmore Hall in white. Inside, the fire burned warm, the baby cooed, and 2 people who had found each other against all odds held on to what they had built. Some storms, it turned out, were not meant to destroy. Some storms were meant to bring you home. Thank you for staying with Sibylla and Kaelin until the very end. Their story began with exile, with a woman sent north to be forgotten, and a man who had been waiting for her without knowing why. But in truth, they always had a choice. They chose to see each other, to fight for each other, to believe that love was worth more than reputation, inheritance, or fear. And if you are not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because there are more stories waiting. More impossible loves, more hard-won choices, more moments that remind us why we believe in happily ever after. Thank you for being here. You are the reason these stories exist.